the advantage of surprise in this way could often leverage it into victory on the battlefield and perhaps a string of victories. The enemy, however, would work hard to come up with a defense against the new strategy, whatever it was, and would often find one quite fast. So what once brought brilliant success and was the epitome of innovation soon no longer worked, and in fact became conventional. Furthermore, in the process of working out a defense against a novel strategy, the enemy itself would often be forced to innovate. Now it was their turn to introduce something surprising and horribly effective, and so the cycle would go on. War has always been ruthless. Nothing stays unconventional for long. It is either innovate or die. In the 18th century, nothing was more startling than the tactics of the Prussian King Frederick the Great. To top Frederick's success, French military theorists devised radical new ideas that were finally tested on the battlefield by Napoleon. By 1806, Napoleon crushed the Prussians, who were still using the once unconventional tactics of Frederick the Great, now grown stale, at the Battle of Jena-Auerstedt. The Prussians were humiliated by their defeat. Now it was up to them to innovate. They studied in depth Napoleon's success, adapted his best strategies, and took them further, creating the seeds for the formation of the German General Staff. This new Prussian army played a large role in the defeat of Napoleon at Waterloo and went on to dominate the military scene for decades. In modern times, the constant challenge to top the enemy with something new and unconventional has taken a turn into dirty warfare. Loosening the codes of honor and morality that in the past limited what a general could do, at least to some extent, modern armies have slowly embraced the idea that anything goes. Guerrilla and terrorist tactics have been known since ancient times. Now they have become not only more common, but more strategic and refined. Propaganda, disinformation, psychological warfare, deception, and political means of waging war have all become active ingredients in any unconventional strategy. A counter-strategy usually develops to deal with the latest in dirty warfare, but it often involves falling to the enemy's level, fighting fire with fire. The dirty enemy adapts by sinking to a dirtier level still, creating a downward spiral. This dynamic is particularly intense in warfare, but it permeates every aspect of human activity. If you are in politics and business, and your opponents or competitors come up with a novel strategy, you must adapt it for your own purposes, or better, top it. Their once new tactic becomes conventional and ultimately useless. Our world is so fiercely competitive that one side will almost always end up resorting to something dirty, something outside earlier codes of accepted behavior. Ignore this spiral out of a sense of morality or pride, and you put yourself at a severe disadvantage. You are called to respond, in all likelihood to fight a little dirty yourself. The spiral dominates not just politics or business, but culture as well, with its desperate search for the shocking and novel to gain attention and win momentary acclaim. Anything goes. The speed of the process has grown exponentially with time. What was unconventional in the arts a few years ago now seems unbearably trite and the height of conformity. What we consider unconventional has changed over the years, but the laws that make unconventionality effective, being based on elemental psychology, are timeless. And these immutable laws are revealed in the history of warfare. Almost 2,500 years ago, the great Chinese strategist Sun Tzu expressed their essence in his discussion of ordinary and extraordinary means. His analysis is as relevant to modern politics and culture as it is to warfare, whether clean or dirty. And once you understand the essence of unconventional warfare, you will be able to use it in your daily life. Unconventional warfare has 4 main principles, as gleaned from the great practitioners of the art. Work outside the enemy's experience. Principles of war are based on precedent. A kind of canon of strategies and counter-strategies develops over the centuries, And since war is so dangerously chaotic, strategists come to rely on these principles for lack of anything else. They filter what's happening now through what happened in the past. The armies that have shaken the world, though, have always found a way to operate outside the canon, and thus outside the enemy's experience. This ability imposes chaos and disorder on the enemy, which cannot orient itself to novelty and collapses in the process. Your task as a strategist is to know your enemies well, then use your knowledge to contrive a strategy that goes outside their experience. What they might have read or heard about matters less than their personal experience, which dominates their emotional lives and determines their responses. When the Germans invaded France in 1940, the French had second-hand knowledge of their blitzkrieg style of warfare from their invasion of Poland the year before, but had never experienced it personally, and were overwhelmed. Once a strategy is used and is no longer outside your enemy's experience, though, it will not have the same effect if repeated. Unfold the extraordinary out of the ordinary. To Sun Tzu and the ancient Chinese, doing something extraordinary had little effect without a setup of something ordinary. You had to mix the two, to fix your opponent's expectations with some banal, ordinary maneuver, a comfortable pattern that they would then expect you to follow. With the enemy sufficiently mesmerized, you would then hit it with the extraordinary, a show of stunning force from an entirely new angle. Framed by the predictable, the blow would have double the impact. The unconventional maneuver that confused enemies, though, would have become conventional the second or third time around. So the wily general might then go back to the ordinary strategy that he had used earlier to fix their attention, and use it for his main attack, for that would be the last thing the enemy would expect. And so the ordinary and the extraordinary are effective only if they play off each other in a constant, spiraling manner. This applies to culture as much as to war. To gain attention with some cultural product, you have to create something new, but something with no reference to ordinary life is not in fact unconventional, but merely strange. What is truly shocking and extraordinary unfolds out of the ordinary. The intertwining of the ordinary and extraordinary is the very definition of surrealism. Act crazy like a fox. Despite appearances, a lot of disorder and irrationality lurks beneath the surface of society and individuals. That is why we so desperately strain to maintain order, and why people acting irrationally can be terrifying. They are demonstrating that they have lost the walls we build to keep out the irrational. We cannot predict what they will do next, and we tend to give them a wide berth. It is not worth mixing it up with such sources of chaos. On the other hand, these people can also inspire a kind of awe and respect, for secretly we all desire access to the irrational seas churning inside us. In ancient times, the insane were seen as divinely possessed. A residue of that attitude survives. The greatest generals have all had a touch of divine strategic madness. The secret is to keep this streak under control. Upon occasion, you allow yourself to operate in a way that is deliberately irrational, but less is more. Do this too much, and you may be locked up. You will, in any case, frighten people more by showing an occasional flash of insanity, just enough to keep everyone off balance and wondering what will come next. As an alternative, act somewhat randomly, as if what you did were determined by a roll of the dice. Randomness is thoroughly disturbing to humans. Think of this behavior as a kind of therapy, a chance to indulge occasionally in the irrational as a relief from the oppressive need to always seem normal. Keep the wheels in constant motion. The unconventional is generally the province of the young, who are not comfortable with conventions and take great pleasure in flouting them. The danger is that as we age, we need more comfort and predictability, and lose our taste for the unorthodox. This is how Napoleon declined as a strategist. He came to rely more on the size of his army and on its superiority in weapons than on novel strategies and fluid maneuvers. He lost his taste